Thanks. Yeah, and maybe since the topic is enterprise SEO, ideally questions for that topic, of course, would be helpful. But I guess Kevin and I can spontaneously try to answer anything. Kevin, when we prepared for this, we talked a little bit about KPIs. And I really like that you immediately differentiated between input metrics, quality KPIs, output KPIs. I think that's something that would be interesting to share with the audience.
Of course. I know you and I, we think very much alike about this. It's a very engineering heavy view, right? Where you look at an organization or a team basically as an engine in a positive sense. And every engine has an input and output, and in between there's something where you can measure the quality of it. And I love that this is, the first topic that we talk about, because I truly believe that if you set the right KPIs for a team, then they can figure out how to get there. But the KPIs are so crucial in the success. If you optimize for the wrong thing, then, even the best insights, tactics, hacks, whatever, it doesn't matter, right? Because you're incentivizing for the wrong thing. So when we think about input, output, and quality metrics, the basic idea is that every team provides some sort of an input, and you can measure that, for example, in the number of content pieces created, or the number of new pages that have been built, or the number of tickets that have been completed, right? So there are different ways to define input metrics, and it should very much depend on what drives your output, right? So you want to sit down, ideally, early on in the strategy and think about, okay, what are the drivers? What are the levers of the output, right? What defines the output? And then in between input and output, we have quality metrics. And the whole idea of quality metrics is to get an understanding of how good the input is, very simply, right? So you can measure something like how many of our pages actually rank in the top 3 positions for their main target keywords, or how many numbers of certain search console errors do we have as something like a health metric, right? So there are different ways to define quality metrics. And then lastly, when it comes to output, that's of course where you think about the impact of SEO in your organization. So very often this should be something like revenue from organic search, or leads or signups from organic search. It can be pipeline from organic search. This is really where you measure the the impact of SEO on the organization. I'm curious, Malte, what have you found to work best when it comes to these kind of metrics? Do you agree or disagree? Are there certain input output metrics that you love?
I see it quite differently. I've never used the term input-output metrics for teams. I always look at what are the leading KPIs, the lagging KPIs. I mean, the lagging is, of course, at the end, SEO revenue or SEO leads, or maybe even SEO traffic, depending on your business model. But I think we can come later to that differentiation. And then I try to deconstruct them, what is leading to the success that I want to have. And that, again, is different per business model, right? For an e-commerce aggregator, it could be having X amount of offers for products. For a B2B business, it could be having X amount of blog posts that receive Y amount of SEO sessions per month. And then I try to define these leading things when I'm somewhat sure that they will create the output that I want. And it's SEO, so you never know exactly, right? There's still a lot of belief or things that you never actually really A/B tested, sometimes because you cannot A/B test it. And then I try to monitor these leading KPIs and see if you're on the right track. And then for larger teams, I think cadence is super important. How many projects can you run in parallel? How quickly can you finish projects? And of course, just in general, how many projects do you actually finish successfully? That would be the first thing to look at for me when I look at enterprise SEO as a team problem or a team topic, team challenge. And then it really depends. For different teams, there are very different challenges. There are SEO teams that are very content marketing driven. They will probably look like really number of content pieces, these kinds of things, even number of people contacted for outreach, and then having success metrics like how many people write back, et cetera, et cetera. And a technical SEO team as an aggregator might have completely different topics. When I have deeper exchanges with other SEO teams, they are often surprised that like 90% of the leading SEO metrics of Idealo have nothing to do with SEO, for example. They are purely about product quality and the parts of the product that are either super relevant for users in a sense that I'm afraid they could impact user signals for Google, or things that are also relevant for Google when they are crawling the site. But it's always individual.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that because I think both leading indicators and input metrics, they both give you a little bit of a sense of control, right? And especially in a field like SEO, where, as you said, so many things are blurry and some things are invisible and it cannot always be 100% sure, it's super important to go back to things that you can actually control and where you can make a difference.
Yeah, especially if you are one of the websites that's regularly affected by Google updates. You cannot just work for 6 months and then wait for the feedback from the update, right? You need to have conviction that certain things are good, like maybe it's working on Core Web Vitals, maybe it's bringing down the share of new index pages, maybe it's reducing redirect chains, like whatever you believe is the challenge you're working on, you need to define those as leading KPIs or input metrics. And then work on those and control them and see that you are making measurable progress. And then, of course, at some point you have the Google update and you see if it goes up or down. But I think it's just crucial to have these metrics to run a team, run a machine, also create incidents in other teams, change priorities in other teams, if SEO is a core business driver and you have that power as an SEO.
Yeah, I think that's a really important call out there. Like, how important is SEO, and that will probably also define, how close, like what you measure, how closely you measure it. And I love that you bring up this problem with core algorithm updates, because it goes back to the nature of SEO, which is a very slow feedback loop, right? It's a very, very long lead time, which means that if you want to adjust your metrics or KPIs, that either takes, like if you want to set them up right, you either need to have a lot of experience or incredibly strong conviction, or it just takes a long time to refine the metrics based on what you learn from these updates. And it's like one of the core challenges in SEO, I feel like, that is not called out a lot of times.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there are solutions like Searchpilot where you try to just A/B test everything and learn from it. And it's possible for many things in SEO, right? But at the end, it will only lead you to a local maxima. A/B testing is always just optimizing what you have, right? But for like big core updates, you can have 50 positive SEO A/B tests in a row, and then the core update completely demotes you because you basically did over optimization, or you managed to rank for keywords where you cannot deliver a great user experience. And this is definitely super hard to control because you have no real metrics for it until it happens, and then it can be too late for some companies. And I think this is one of the challenges for enterprise SEO, that on the one hand, you are not like other marketing channels in the sense that you normally do not run campaigns unless you are very content marketing heavy. You do not have this immediate feedback of, for example, Google AdWords campaigns. And you are more like product management often, right? But also, if you look at product management best practices, it's all about having a North Star and then working towards it. But you cannot 100% deconstruct the North Star of having long-term Google rankings, because you can do a lot of activities that lead to more rankings temporarily, but do not lead to rankings long-term. And I think controlling this is one of the main challenges for enterprise SEO leaders. And it's something that I personally spent a lot of time on. I don't know how it was for you in your various enterprise SEO roles.
Yeah, 100%. I had the same experience. And our North Star metrics changed over time, right? That's another important factor. It's not something that's always steady. It can change with the business. If the business pivots, it can change with the market, the condition, the maturity of the company. So, I think like one meta point that I always try to highlight is that SEO is a very iterative process, which doesn't mean you don't know what you do, but it just simply means that a lot of these things are very fluid and they might change over time. I think that is another challenge that you want to stay on top of. It's just, when do you change a North Star metric? What does it mean for the business? What is the right one for different types of business or different maturity levels of businesses, right? I would argue, for example, that a lot of startups until maybe now that optimized mainly for growth, they have very different North Star metrics, even when it comes to SEO, than now where you optimize for maybe sustainability or profitability, right? It could, for example, be that you position SEO more as a channel to improve your ROAS, right? To improve your efficiency from ad spend, for example, which, maybe beforehand didn't matter because startups had a lot of money to just grow and do, have a very long payback periods and spend a lot of money on Google Ads and on SEO. So don't want to get too lost into that conversation, but just wanted to highlight that, these things can change over time, and it takes a lot of experience and skill to understand what the right time is to steer this big tanker, which is an organization, towards a different direction.
Yeah, and I definitely see this change in the North Star metrics on profitability in a lot of companies at the moment. And it actually drives up the demand for SEO at the moment to really crazy levels that I have not seen in the European startup community, especially the German startup scene before. And it's not just startups, right? Also grown-ups, because there were so many companies that were thriving on unprofitable growth and now have to go out of the SEM bidding and have to ramp up SEO at the same time, which can be quite a challenge, of course. But yeah, not getting too philosophical on the startup revenue scene. I think both of us, we talked about product and marketing already. And I think there's always one interesting question that I know you have also published on before. Should SEO sit in marketing or in product?
Yeah, that's like, it's such a recurring question. And, I've changed my mind a little bit about what the answer should be. For a long time, I was a strong advocate of, SEO should always sit in product. And I actually don't think that anymore. I actually think that now it depends on whether the SEO strategy is product-led or if it's marketing-led, right? And so if your predominant, like if your main source of organic traffic comes through content you create yourself, I call these types of companies integrators, right? They often scale heavily with blog content hubs, lead generation tools, landing pages. If that's the case, then I think there's a fair point to be made for SEO to sit under marketing. And then on the other hand, if, as we just spoke about, if you're an aggregator, which means you have your content is created by some sort of an inventory, Idealo would be an example, G2 would be an example, or if you are a marketplace and you have a lot of user-generated content, then I think it's really important for SEO to sit under product. And I've seen both of these versions where an aggregator had SEO under marketing and under product, and I think the difference is just simply day and night, because you get access to the right resources faster if you sit in the right organization. What do you think, Malte?
Totally agree. I also think that there are a lot of companies where it very much makes sense that SEO is in product, either with SEO-focused product owners or having SEO like a cross-team function similar to UX or Agile that can work with various teams. But it doesn't make sense for every company. Like, as you said, if you're a B2B company and your SEO approach is to publish 5 articles per month on how to do X, and it's like text heavy, maybe you produce a video infographic, that doesn't have to sit on product, right? It can be marketing, it's editorial heavy, it's design heavy, it's very much about seeding and outreach, and that doesn't have to be in product. But I mean, I've also seen examples where you just couple marketing and product very closely, and then it really doesn't matter. And there are, of course, companies where it sits in both, like companies that have both approaches, like an content-heavy approach on one part of the business, and for another part of the business, maybe like some kind of aggregation play. And then it's really just about alignment. And there are companies where marketing and product are silos, and there are companies where product and marketing are merged into one unit. I mean, there's this role of the CTPMO, like the Chief Technology Product and Marketing Officer that some companies have. And then again, it really doesn't matter. And I have one example, like I can't name the company right now, I think, but I know there's one aggregator in Germany where when the SEO team switched from marketing into product, actually you could see their SEO, like they were flat for like 3 years in terms of search metrics visibility. And a few months after SEO switched into product, their SEO visibility started to increase and grew by like, I think 100% over 3 years or something like that. So that was like a very, very positive example of, in some companies, SEO must be in product.
That's a good call out. And I really like something you said earlier, which is that if SEO lives in product, you really have to think like a product manager, right? Like you really cannot use like the classic, be super focused on tactics and the classic SEO axioms and reasoning. You have to approach it from a product marketer perspective. Sorry, from a product manager perspective, not marketer, manager, and use the same kind of wording, use the same kind of tools, operate like a PM, right? Because you work not just with engineers, but also designers, data people, all sorts of people as part of your team. And that's a very, very different mindset than marketing-led SEO, where you think like a traditional marketer.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially if it's about building sustainable systems for SEO and automating things like aggregators need to do, large e-commerce companies need to do. I think it totally makes sense to think like a product manager. Actually, product management certification and courses are one of the main things that I recommend to my SEO team. And I've seen people transition between SEO and product manager. I mean, I've done it myself. I was VP of product at Searchmetrics actually, after and before being an SEO. And I've seen many other people do this transition, and especially for technical SEOs, it's the right mindset to have, and it gives them a lot of tools to work well and think correctly about the solutions, which is not to upload one time a CSV file of href lengths, but to think about, can we build a logic, and also should we build a logic? Because if your website is only in 2 languages and one of them in English and the other is German, and Google is not confused at all, you maybe don't really need hreflang as your top priority.
Yeah. The thinking is different, and it might even open a lot more doors. I think sometimes the title of SEO can even be a bit limiting, but as PMs, there's a different set of expectations and buy-in sometimes. Depends a little bit on the company. But Malte, one thing I'm really curious about, where I want to hear your opinion is, how should CEOs and CMOs and CFOs treat SEO maybe, in comparison to other marketing channels? Like, how should they think about it and treat SEO?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Let's maybe start with the CFO. I think it's important to understand that while some methods of performance marketing are important for the operations of SEO, you cannot forecast the revenue like performance marketing. There's too much risk involved. You have a very long lead time until revenue goes up. It can go down for circumstances you don't understand. So for revenue forecasting, I would see it like a brand channel. You invest over time, maybe even like paid ad installs, right? Like you make an investment over time. There's some predictability, but you can lose it all if you mess up. Then if you look at it on the top line, of course, it adds a lot. But if you look at it on the bottom line, it actually adds a lot more than you think for many companies, because there is no or very little incremental cost for every session you get. Like you have maybe a little bit of server cost if you can attribute it, and that's it, right? So it can really help you to bring down the average cost per click or per session or per lead, or however you want to look at it. As a CMO, I would say it depends. Sorry for giving this very vague answer. I mean, there are SEO teams that operate like a pure content marketing team, like almost like digital PR. Like where it's just about producing content that people talk about, stories that get shared, get the links. At the end, there are only 3 relevant landing pages anyways. And those I would probably treat like a PR team, just with slightly adjusted success metrics. And there are technical SEO teams that I would treat like a product team. Like they need a North Star metrics. They need to commit to some level of health metrics, maybe, but that's already not something that the CMO should define. In the end, they need to forecast and own a metric, which for most businesses is SEO revenue. But they need to be transparent that it cannot always be predicted perfectly. And if it changes, like if it's too low, there's not necessarily something you can do to make it go up the next month. Because like, I don't know, a core update reversal might just take until the next core update. And if your forecasting is just having this traffic guaranteed, and if your whole business model breaks when the traffic goes away, that's kind of a problem. And in performance marketing, you can always say, okay, I go down with the margin to reach my traffic goal because I need the traffic to have my, I don't know, app install goals, brand reach goals, whatever. In SEO, you can't do it, right? You cannot short-term fix it if it's really broken. So for the tech SEO part, I would treat it like product management almost.
Yeah, I love that. Especially the two things that I love that you said that stuck out to me. One is about the fact that SEO is a demand capture channel, right? You cannot create demand with SEO. You can only capture demand. And so, okay, I want to have that conversation with you. I think I see you. Not exactly. Let's talk about that. Okay, so I'll let that stand here. And then real quick, the second point that I really liked is the point about marginal cost, right? Like SEO has pretty much zero marginal cost. You have fixed costs for maybe some employees, maybe some marketing assets, but especially compared to advertising channels, the cost just does not scale even remotely as much with SEO, and that is the big advantage of the channel in my mind. No matter whether you treat it as a brand channel or as a performance channel, but that is the real magic in SEO. And so, especially now in this climate where companies need to save more money or can spend less frivolously, SEO often becomes a very, very attractive alternative, which also makes the game more competitive. But this is probably like a larger conversation. So, Malte, now I'm curious. Like, it seems like you disagree with demand capture versus generation. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, a little bit. But at the end, it depends on the terminology, right? Like, I mean, if you invent a new product and there is no demand for it, like nobody's searching for it, of course, SEO is not the channel to capture the demand for this product, right? Because it doesn't exist. But you can create the demand by capturing traffic that is searching for the problem you are solving. Yeah. And of course, like bottom of funnel, you cannot create demand. You can only capture it. But I think top of the funnel, you can probably create the demand by catching people with good content marketing at a point where they are searching for their problem without having any idea what the solution might be, right? Like, I don't know, a few years ago, massage guns became a big thing. Probably they existed in some niches already, but I think most people didn't even know they existed. And if nobody was searching for it, of course, ranking for massage gun wouldn't have helped you. Right. But if you ranked for my muscles are sore after my workout and you listed, you can go to a massage, it costs money every time you go. You can, I don't know, convince your partner to give you a massage, but it might not actually be medically correct. Or there's this one-time product, like a product you buy with a one-time payment, the massage gun, it helps you, right? You could use clever content marketing and SEO to generate demand, at least for your solution, but still you are technically capturing demand for the problem. So that's why I said it's like a terminology thing. Of course, 99% of the time you're right. SEO captures demand, it doesn't create it. But I think by ranking for problems and ranking for questions that people have, you can actually capture them very early and guide them in the funnel, where otherwise they might not have gone into the funnel at all.
I think we can agree on that. I think we can agree that generally you capture demand, but by capturing demand, you can make people aware of a new thing. And that kind of awareness is, so you can kind of like inspire people by capturing or getting them at a different problem. So I think, yeah, there's really, you know, like an interesting angle there of like some horizontal demand creation, awareness creation. We have to refine that point, but I'm generally with you there, right? It's similar to this whole idea of a blue ocean strategy, where a lot of companies get excited about, oh yeah, we should just define a new category and do something that nobody else has ever done. But you still need to address some sort of a problem that people have, and that kind of problem is still an existing demand, even though people might not be able to point their finger at it or name it correctly. So I think we're actually in agreement here. So we spoke a lot about enterprise and, you know, how to define the right metrics and a bit of stakeholder management. But what would you say are the biggest differences between enterprise and non-enterprise SEOs? Like, so when we step out of the enterprise game for a second, what do you think is the biggest difference between SEOs outside of that environment compared to enterprise SEOs?
I think the biggest difference is that in enterprise SEO, you can almost never go alone and solve something. Like, it's always about having a case, business case, or showing that a health metric is affected, whatever, and then convincing a content creation team, a PR team, digital PR team, very, very often a development team to work on something. And in non-enterprise SEO, you often can just log into WordPress, install a plugin, and configure it the way you want. If I want to do that, I first create a process with our legal team to vet this thing that I want to install. And there's this IT security discussion around it. And this is like, in the enterprise setting, there is so much overhead. But then if you get the ball rolling, you sometimes I have been in a situation where suddenly 5 engineering teams were working for 1 quarter on something that I wanted. It's when Idealo decided to take Core Web Vitals more seriously. And we went on some of our domains from 0% good Core Web Vitals to 99% good Core Web Vitals based on URL impressions. And Google made this blog post, e-commerce Core Web Vitals Hall of Fame Germany, and Idealo was in there because we were one of the fastest sites. Even though as an aggregator, we have the disadvantage that we can do almost no caching because we are comparing prices, and users don't want cached prices from 5 minutes ago. They want current prices. And this was insane to see, right? There's so much engineering power behind it and so many smart people working on it. And I think this is the biggest difference. It's harder to get the ball rolling, but if you get it, you have an insanely strong machine often to work. And like a second thing is, since like roughly 1 year, this term programmatic SEO has popped up, where parts of the SEO community have discovered that there's more than writing blog posts. You can actually optimize a template. And I'm like, why do we need a word for this? This is like what enterprise SEOs, and also spammers, by the way, not just enterprise SEOs, have been doing for 20 years. Like, why are we now needing a new word? Well, we needed it because there was a large part of the SEO community that wasn't aware of this approach. Like, they were writing blog posts, and their SEO work was, let's write 5 blog posts a month, and let's update 5 of my old blog posts. And that works for some affiliate niches or some local businesses. But in enterprise SEO, it's always been about, how do I optimize these 10,000 pages? And in my reality, I sometimes shut down ideas, because then I ask people, okay, how many pages does it affect? And they say, well, roughly 9,000 pages per country. And then if it's not the 9,000 most important pages per country, I'm like, okay, this is interesting, but we shouldn't waste our time on it. Like, let's look into this idea that will impact 1 million pages. So to me, that's the biggest difference, like the scale of things and how hard it is to get the ball rolling, but then also how rewarding it is to make like really big changes, because suddenly 10, 20, maybe 100 people are working on a project that you pitched, that you came up with.
That's a good point. I'm just curious, quick side question. Did you see a positive traffic impact from optimizing Core Web Vitals? You don't have to say how much or anything. I'm just curious, like, did you notice a positive impact?
We could not tie it to a specific gain in traffic. Like, we saw traffic uplift over that period anyways. We had good Google core updates. I mean, from Systrix, there's some number where they looked at, I think, 100,000 all domains. And they saw something like 2% increase if you had good Core Web Vitals and 3% decrease if you had bad Core Web Vitals, something like that. And I am convinced that for aggregators, it's more important than non-aggregators. But yeah, I cannot say it brought us X% of uplift. I made some calculations, of course, but I cannot, with any scientific approach, say this is what it brought us. Because there's no alternative universe where we didn't do it, so we don't have an A/B test.
Yeah, I think it's totally fair to say. I also totally agree with you that aggregators need to think about Core Web Vitals much more than integrators. And the challenge is a little bit that it's a binary metric. You either meet good core web vitals or not, or meet Google's benchmarks. And my understanding is also that there's more, you get more punished for not meeting it than you get rewarded for meeting it. But at the end of the day, these metrics can positively impact the user experience as well. So there might be more reasons than just SEO to optimize core web vitals, just to be fair. But you mentioned a couple of like really good points about about enterprise SEO versus non-enterprise SEO, and one of them is that you have to make the case for things much more so than in a like a non-enterprise environment. And oftentimes, I think that's a good thing actually. A lot of people dread business cases, and it's like, oh, everything is so slow. But when you have a big ship, you need to measure your decisions much more precisely and have a good reason to use resources that might be scarce or that everybody wants to have access to. So I have found that in being forced to make business cases in the past, I actually think about things a little different, or I refine and sharpen my thinking about what I actually want to do. So I would argue that this is a good exercise, but of course it comes at the cost of time. And young companies or young startups that need to run fast might just want to sacrifice accuracy for speed. There can be pros to that as well. And matter of fact, I even see a lot of large companies right now sacrifice accuracy for speed because this massive shift in the economy and the landscape. A lot of big companies see their revenues break away, and so that might not be the right time to measure very accurately and move slowly. That might be the time to say, listen, we just want more shots on goal. We want to move faster so we can learn faster and pivot and adjust faster. So there's probably a little bit of a time component there as well.
Yeah, I totally agree with the first point you just made. The being forced to do it as a business case, to think about what is really the additional revenue I will make, what is the long-term impact, is actually a very healthy exercise. And I have abandoned a lot of ideas because in calculating the business case, I realized, well, okay, actually, this is only going to be 100,000 euros per year, and the effort is really not worth it. And I currently invest a lot of time into how we forecast and predict the impact of SEO measures and ideas, because we have probably 10 to 100 times more ideas than we can do. And just thinking about what can the impact be, how strong is our conviction, what is the likelihood of something working out or working not, is quite interesting, and actually leads you to abandoning some ideas that are just long shots that you probably should not spend your time on.
Yep. Been there, done that. Maybe a couple more points that could be really interesting, I think, for the audience, and I really want to hear your opinion about that. Vertical versus horizontal alignment. So one of the challenges that I faced when working in the house was that we oftentimes think about vertical alignment, which means we want to get buy-in from our manager or boss, and want to make sure that the team that we manage understands what the mission is and what to do, et cetera, et cetera. But what's also very important oftentimes in a house is horizontal alignment, meaning alignment with your peers. Either, it could be something like the paid search team or paid ads team, could be the engineering team or data science team, like lots of teams that you collaborate with that live more horizontally in most cases. And so my question to you is, how do you think about vertical versus horizontal alignment? And what are some of the things, how do you tactically approach that in your day-to-day? Like, how do you make that happen? Do you create documents, meetings? What's your approach there?
All of it. No, I mean, both dimensions are very important, of course. I currently work at Idealo, an organization that gives a lot of freedom in the tools. So this upwards alignment, there is really not so much discussion and convincing people. And the downstream alignment, like with my team, it's not like I come up with the strategy and give it to the team. It's more like the team comes up with the strategy and I'm one of the team members. And then I'm, of course, the person running around with it, convincing others. And what I try to do is, it depends on the idea and how sure I am. If I'm unsure about it, I normally create a Confluence page and I say, these are assumptions, and I ask people to read it and to comment, like an engineer, a product manager, a data scientist, an editor, somebody leading an editorial team. And then over time, the idea becomes sharper and sharper and sharper. And sometimes it just happens that people see an aspect of the idea and they are like, this sounds very reasonable, not just for SEO reasons. And they just do it because they can do it in their unit, because it's not actually a multi-team effort. And then something already got done without me even pitching the idea. And then a lot is also just meetings, like being transparent, sharing with other leaders amongst the organization what you're working on, why you're working on things. I think it's very important to have the main business metrics available to everyone. So everyone at the company should be aware how important is each marketing channel and what do they contribute to top line and bottom line. And if everybody is aware that SEO is maybe the main driver of your bottom line, everybody is probably incentivized. Oh yeah, I want to help SEO. And of course, there are some other things in there, like is it the company strategy to rely more or less on SEO, yada, yada. But I think in general, having this transparency is just important. And then also sharing with your stakeholders and your peers, what are we doing? And then following up on this thing that we did, it worked out or didn't work out. And that can mean for 9 months in a row telling people that your test failed with a significantly negative result, or you had an insignificant test result. Because unless you are transparent, you will not get buy-in, right? You need people. As a leader in an enterprise, you always need people to trust you. You cannot just always convince everyone with data and answer every question with data. People need to have general trust that if you say this is something we should do, that you are right, at least for your area. And you build that trust with transparency, with open communication, and with, of course, maybe at the beginning, making a couple of easy bets where you already know or are very, very sure that they will work out. And then you need to let results speak for themselves.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I know we're running out of time. Just quickly to add my take on that as well. I totally agree with you. I think there's like this part of that has helped me be very successful in the past, where there's just a set of documentation that's accessible for everyone and that people know about. Could be Google Docs, but it can also be something like Confluence or Slab or different tools, right? The tool in itself doesn't matter as much as having a unique source of truth where people know they know what the strategy is for SEO, they know updates, they know where things are, what the challenges are, performance and everything. So one of the most helpful artifacts that I have created in my career at different companies is just this central point, the central source where people can get information. But then, as you also mentioned, you have to also be proactive and shout out what you're doing, what the successes are, even the failures, just so people are aware. And I've noticed that oftentimes that creates a pull where people start to get interested in SEO and they start to get a bit more involved and bought in. So those are some ways that I noticed help. But I totally agree. We probably want to lead with some quick wins or some successes early on, just to get that trust and credibility, and continue from there. But Malte, I think we're at time here. I'm gonna shoot it back over to our amazing hosts.